So the foundation of human control doesn't matter all these different levels of the conspiracy. Yeah, we need to know about them. But if you get to the foundation, it's human perception. So this is why we're having this hysteria of censorship, because they don't want another way of looking at the world to be heard by the population. Only that which will lead the population to perceive the world as it suits the manipulators. And why this is so important, what's going on here, is because the greatest gift that any parent can give a child is a free mind. And we have an excuse for an education system dedicated to the very inversion of that, a programmed groupthink mind. And I feel for children and young people today, because I was born in 1952. I know I don't look it, I have to say, but I was born in 1952. I went to school in the kind of mid-late 50s and 1960s. And yes, they were guiding you, and this is what you should think, and all that stuff. But it wasn't even a smear of what young people and children go through today in the education systems of the world. They have nothing whatsoever to do with education and everything to do with setting out to program a perception for life. And there's this line you hear all over the place. Everybody knows that, mate. Why does everybody know that? Because that's what almost everybody has ever heard. So you look at education, you see what children and young people are told to believe, and then they turn on the television and they see a newsreader or some reporter telling them exactly the same. They'll see a politician who'll tell them exactly the same. They'll see corporations pushing in exactly the same direction. All the peers around them who've been through the same system are confirming that what they're being told to believe is how things are. So if you have a situation where that's all you've ever heard, there's a heck of a chance that's what you're going to believe, perceive as your reality and the world that you are living in. And so we have this incessant confirmation of the same story, and today it is more extreme than it has ever been. And I like to use the analogy of the headset. It's not even an analogy. My God, it's so close to the truth. You put on a headset in a virtual reality game, and you see people, they're in empty rooms, and they're thrashing around as if whatever's being fed to their mind is happening. Well, it's just a game. And what you can do when you do that is you can take the headset off and you go, oh, it was just a game. But this incessant programming of human perception, you can't take off unless you choose to do so. So, imagine you are in the womb with a headset on, and it's feeding you a sense of reality. You come out into the world and you meet your parents, both of whom have got headsets on. Your siblings have got headsets on. Very soon, ridiculously soon, my God, after arriving in this world, you are sat at a desk where an authority figure wearing a headset is telling you when you have to be there, when you can leave, when you can go to the toilet, when you can eat, when you can talk, what is and isn't, what's right and wrong. The programming has begun in earnest, and all your mates are sitting around you with their headsets on. You go on eventually to university, and professors with letters after their name, oh yes, a professor now, with a headset on. You turn on the television and a newsreader says, hello, good evening and welcome, with a bloody headset on. And he leads to a reporter who's got a headset on. And everywhere you look, you go out into the world of work and all the people around you have got headsets on. And they're all being fed the same reality. And in this way, billions of people can believe absolute bollocks. And believe vehemently that it's true. And then some people come along, people like in this room, and they say, oh, excuse me, I've got some questions. This don't make sense to me. And what are you? You are mad, you're bad, you're crazy. You get ridiculed and abused for the crime of being different. And that's an important point. When you look through history, the normal has changed, the nature of the normal. But the population's adherence and belief in that normal is absolutely constant. So, normal, and what is normal? It's only what we normally experience. And anyone that questions the normal gets the treatment. But let's put this into perspective, this normal. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our experienced reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in energy in its different forms. I've seen it as high as 0.5%, whatever, it's tiny. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, is a fraction, a smear of the 0.005%. Humans, in terms of what they can see, are basically blind. And yet, we are told that all we need to know is often within a single book, within a smear of 0.005% of what exists in the universe. It's insanity, but it's normal, thus it is believed. And when you look at this, there's a phrase that I've always lived my life by. It's attributed to Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, who said words to the effect of, wisdom is knowing how little we know. It's going beyond the arrogance. It's having the humility to realize that in the circumstances I've described, while we're experiencing a human life, our ability to know what there is to know in the great infinity is always going to be tiny. So when you take on that philosophy, wisdom is knowing how little we know, the philosophy that says one thing we know that cannot be challenged, that cannot be denied, is this: whatever we know or think we know, there is always more to know. Always. Now, What the education system is saying, what the media is saying, what all these forms of mainstream communication are saying is no. All you need to know is what we're telling you you need to know. And so to break that cycle, to break that stranglehold on human perception, we have to question everything. Question what I say, what the news says, what anyone says, and see if it stands up to scrutiny. And that's why education is really about setting the minds of young people free. Saying that, we're all expressions of one infinite consciousness, whatever name you want to give it. But we're all unique expressions of that consciousness. Just because we're all part of one consciousness doesn't mean we're all the same blob. I'm one consciousness, and I'm one consciousness, and I'm one consciousness. We are unique expressions of it. Therefore, children, young people, you can have your own unique view of the world, your own unique view of you. Instead, what we see, and this is always what you see, is an inversion of that. It's called groupthink. Groupthink that says, this is what you must think, otherwise we're going to give you a real bad time. So I've been questioning reality for quite a few years now. And I'm currently banned from 26 European countries, banned from Australia. I've got a speaking tour coming up in my own country, and it's called the Secret Tour because we're only letting people know where exactly the venue is 90 minutes before it starts, because if we give these moronic people any longer, they will intimidate the venue into pulling the event, which has happened to me so many times, it's unbelievable. And, this word inversion, wherever you look in this world, it's inverted. Everything that should be is the opposite. And so what you've got now are people who claim to be anti-fascist who are actually expressions of fascism in the sense that they act in exactly the same way. My view is very simple. Everyone should have their own right to their opinion, and everyone have the right to decide what they make of that opinion. End of story. That's all we need. And what that will do is unleash the fantastic variety of opinion and view and evidence and information that will just tear down the dam on human perception and let it free think. And this world would dramatically change in an instant when that's allowed to happen, and that's why it's not allowed to happen. So we must do it. We must insist on it. And we can start with ourselves, that we always demand the self-respect. That's what it is. The self-respect of having our right to an opinion. You may not agree with my opinion, and that's equally right, because you have a right to yours. But once we stop expressing what we truly think for fear of what other people think or what consequences may follow, we are playing into the game of perceptual indoctrination, because we are shutting off the lines of communication that allow another view, another angle on the world to be communicated. And people have said to me over the years, a few people can't control the world. Do you know something? It's a piece of bloody cake. It's a piece of cake. Because there's three mentalities that we see in the world in general. One expression of which is in this marquee today. And the other two are the reason every tyranny in history has been allowed to happen. Doesn't matter if it's a communist tyranny or a fascist tyranny, masks on the same face, tyranny. And these two mentalities are, one, those that just believe whatever authority says without question. No, well, hold on a minute. I've got a few questions. There are no questions. Have you seen what's on the news? Oh, yeah, it's this, that's the other. Oh, look, yeah. No question. Well, maybe they're lying to us. Well, what do you think? No, none of it. And that mentality has allowed every tyranny in history to manifest, because fascism is never imposed by fascists. There's never enough of them. Fascism is imposed by the population acquiescing to fascism. That's how it comes in. And then there's group number two. That group, that mentality says, God, I'm not sure about what they're telling me. In fact, I've got some big bloody doubts about it. But what are the consequences for me of saying so, of doing something about it? Oh my God, I'm staying strong, I'll go with it. And this is the thing, consequences. We've got to surely ditch consequences. Because if we think, what are the consequences of me doing something, especially today, then we'll find a long list of reasons why we shouldn't do it. But the point is that the consequences of not doing it, the consequences of acquiescence to something we don't believe is right, the consequences of doing nothing are vastly, vastly more extreme than ever the consequences of standing up now and saying, I'm not having it. Because if people think it's bad now, where this is planned to go is absolutely horrific. And that's why we need spines that are going to stand up to this. And that brings us... That brings us to the third group. The third group is the mentality that has ended every tyranny in history. Everyone. It's the group that says, I can see what's happening and I'm not frickin' having it. I am not acquiescing to my own enslavement, and bloody hell, I'm not acquiescing to my children's enslavement. I started this journey in 1990, and I couldn't fill a bloody phone box with interest, I'm telling you. People say a few people can't control the world, and it is actually dead simple, and this is how it really works. Imagine a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid, you've got a tiny few people who are orchestrating this whole concentration camp for humanity. And then coming down the pyramid are different levels of it, and every level down knows less and less and less and less about what the people at the top know. And the way it works, it's a very simple system of imposition, acquiescence. Imposition, acquiescence. So the people at the top of the pyramid impose their will on the next level, who take the imposition and acquiesce to it and then impose it on the next level. And very few levels from the top of the pyramid You're meeting people who have no idea there even is a bloody pyramid. Never mind a conspiracy. They just do what they're told without question. And so down the pyramid it comes, imposition, acquiescence, until you reach the bottom of the pyramid where the vast majority of the human population are. And if we acquiesce at that point to that which is imposing upon us, politicians, corporations, and such like media, then we complete a circuit between the population and the few at the top, a circuit of imposition, acquiescence, that allows those tiny few people, and globally you'd get those people in one room, those tiny few people to impose their will on the entirety of the human population, purely by the lower levels perceived to be acquiescing to the level they perceive to be above them. And this has gone on throughout human history. Like I say, the norms may change, the cultures may change. And indeed, look around the world now. I don't care if it's an Islamic culture or a Christian culture, a Jewish culture. I don't care what it is, and it's Hindu culture. That same system prevails, imposition, acquiescence. And we need to break that. And we break it quite simply by the two-letter word that is the most powerful word in the English language if used correctly. No! 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 And as we look at the world today, this is not a time for prevarication. It's not a time for, well, when there's an R in the month, I might look at it. Or, well, I'm not sure what the consequence is for me. We are looking in the face of a tyranny, the like of which this world in known human history has never seen, because it's founded on artificial intelligence and it's founded on digital money. Digital money that can be programmed to dictate what it can be spent on. Digital money that can be programmed so that you only have a certain amount of time to spend it, and if you don't spend it in that time, it's deleted. All this becomes possible once we have digital money. And what we saw with the lockdowns and the isolation, that was just a preliminary play to what is planned. This is what we call 15-minute cities, where people will be basically locked away in a community and find it very difficult to go much further out of it. That's what's planned. It's been planned for a long time. I wrote a book in 1992. It came out in 93 called The Robots' Rebellion. God, prophetic that was, The Robots' Rebellion. And in which I said that they want an end to cash. They want an end to cash and one world currency, digital currency now, which would control everything. To the point where if you're in a 15-minute city and you say, no, I'm not having that, going to drive straight through. Well, then they fine you and you go, I'm not paying it. And loads of people don't pay it. Oh, no, we're not doing that. But with digital money, you'll find before you get to the end of the street through your number plate or whatever. So this is what we're looking at. This is not a time for prevarication. This is a time for all of us to steel the backbone, to realize that 8 billion people, my God, far less than that, cannot be controlled by a handful unless the billions acquiesce to their own enslavement. We have to reach this point where we can summon the courage and say, I can see where it's going and I've got to do something now. not acquiesce with it. And look at our children in the eyes and our grandchildren in the eyes and tell them what we were doing when this control system that controls every aspect of their lives by then was being brought in. What were you doing, daddy, mummy, granddad, grandma, when this came in? Oh, yeah, I was watching Love Island, darling. And, you know, if you look at the end of every tyranny in history, it's never been the majority that have brought it down. It's been the few. It's been the tenacious. It's been the determined. It's been those who have the self-respect not to be imposed upon. And that's what happens with the first two of those mentalities. They concede to authority their self-respect. Number one says, I'm not questioning authority because I don't have the self-respect to question authority and think that I can have a different opinion. Number two says, I've lost my self-respect. I've handed it to authority because while I can see something's not right, I fear the consequences, so I'm going along with it. And it's self-respect that has ended every tyranny in history, that says we're not having it. I respect myself far too much to be imposed upon by a bunch of frickin' psychopathic morons. And this conspiracy has been going on a very, very long time. In the end, it goes into other dimensions, and that's another story. The Icke's mad. But it's a time when we can look back at where this has come from. You can go back to ancient Babylon and other ancient societies, and you can see this move through history, through the Roman Empire, the European empires, the colonial empires, globalization, World Health Organization, United Nations, all of it. You can see the progression. And now these people think they're in the last leg, the last home straight of what they've worked towards for so long. Well, we are going to disappoint them. We are the generations that will be looked back upon by history as the generations that brought down a massive global tyranny just as it thought it had reached its goal of the ages, the great work of the ages. We are going to bring it down. And how? Because our perceptions at last are seeing it. What needs to go on top of that is perception becoming action, perception of what is happening becoming non-acquiescence with what is happening. And it doesn't matter who is the next Prime Minister of Britain or the next President of the United States. It doesn't matter. They are the oil rags, not the engineers. Yes, with Keir Starmer, it will happen quicker. Yes, it will. There's no pushback. But they're both going in the same direction. It's irrelevant. We don't need politicians to do it for us. As we remember who we really are, not a human, but a consciousness having a brief experience called human, as we realize that, as we realize the true power that has been latent within us while we identified as humans, I'm just little me, I've got no power, we have become addicted to saviors. Oh, Trump is my savior. Oh, Musk is my savior. We don't need saviors. What saviors do is they say, give me your power. Give me your power. I'll do it. Thank you very much. That's very good. Now, What did you say, Master, I'd have to do with this? It's not going to change anything. It never has. What's going to change it is the mass of the people ignoring the politicians and saying, I will acquiesce to what I believe is right. What I don't believe to be right, you can stick it up your ass. And what they're after is control of the children's perception so that they become the adults that suit the agenda. And that's why what is happening here is so fantastic, because it's throwing a spanner in that works. It's saying to children and young people, you have a free, open mind. Frickin' use it. Thank you very much.